Have you ever wondered how someone can remain faithful to a calling, even when everything around them falls apart? Today, we're diving into the story of Jeremiah, known as the Weeping Prophet, a man who dedicated his life to warning the people of Judah about the dangerous path they were on. From a young age, Jeremiah received a divine calling to proclaim a hard and unpopular message, that the people needed to abandon their unfaithfulness and return to God. But throughout this mission, he faced rejection, persecution, and unimaginable physical suffering. Jeremiah wasn't just a prophet, he was a symbol of resilience and unwavering faith. Even when he was ridiculed, imprisoned, and nearly left to die, he never gave up on his mission. And while his journey was marked by tears and pain, he also brought a message of hope and future restoration. If you're ready to witness a story of courage and commitment that defies all limits, like the video and prepare for an epic journey into the life of Jeremiah. Let's begin. Imagine a young man in Judah, living in a time of apparent stability, yet about to experience the weight of a calling that would change the course of his life and the fate of a nation. This young man was Jeremiah. Early in his life, he was chosen by God for a challenging mission, to warn the people about their unfaithfulness and distance from God. Jeremiah would be more than just a regular spokesperson, he would become the weeping prophet, known for the suffering and anguish that would accompany his journey. The weight of this responsibility was immense, as he knew it wouldn't be easy to convince Judah to abandon its wayward path and turn back to God. Jeremiah, despite his youth and inexperience, did not shy away from the call. When God called him, he hesitated for a moment, questioning if he was truly capable of fulfilling such a significant task. "I am only a young man," he said, feeling unprepared for the role of prophet. But God assured him that he would be with him, strengthening him every step of the way. This was the beginning of an adventure that would change his life forever. Jeremiah didn't just accept the invitation, he gave himself to it fully, knowing that the journey ahead would be long and full of challenges. This calling was more than an invitation, it was a mark that would set him apart from others, a solitary path he would have to walk. Jeremiah knew the message he was to deliver would not be well received. After all, he was going to tell the people he loved that they were heading in the wrong direction. God had prepared him to face rejection and pain, and Jeremiah felt the weight of this responsibility in a way few could imagine. He understood that he would be seen as a prophet of calamity, but his commitment was to the truth that God had revealed to him. Throughout his mission, Jeremiah would encounter countless difficulties and become a symbol of the fight for faith and loyalty to God. He was about to embark on the journey of his life, and despite all the uncertainties, his heart was strengthened by the calling he had received. Jeremiah knew that Judah's unfaithfulness and distance from God were deep issues that would require more than words to be healed. He would have to touch the people's hearts, awakening them to the need for repentance and return to God. For you, the viewer, Jeremiah's calling is an invitation to reflect on the challenges that arise in our own lives. How far are we willing to go when we feel called to something greater? Like the video if this story is awakening something in you, and join us on this epic journey that Jeremiah is about to undertake. After accepting his calling, Jeremiah began his journey with a deep conviction, proclaiming the message of repentance and the need to return to God to the people of Judah. But he quickly realized that this task would be a constant battle against indifference and pride. Jeremiah didn't just face distrust, he was met with open rejection and hostility. He was seen as someone who only brought bad news, the weeping prophet who consistently warned about Judah's unfaithfulness. Rather than listening to his message, people mocked his seriousness, ignoring the warnings of the dangers of continuing to live away from God's ways. In every square, on every street, Jeremiah cried out for the people of Judah to abandon idolatry and return to true faith. However, the response he received was often scorn and ridicule. He didn't preach for fame or recognition, he preached out of love for his people and loyalty to his God. But with each rejection, the weight of his mission grew heavier. Still, he did not give up. His perseverance in the face of so many obstacles was a testament to a faith that refused to be silenced. Rejection came not only from common people but also from authorities and religious leaders, who saw Jeremiah as a threat. He was a prophet who directly confronted the errors of Judah, exposing the failures of the powerful and challenging the false sense of security they passed on to the people. Jeremiah knew his mission would place him in constant conflict with those in power, but he was not intimidated. His words were like an unquenchable fire, and his faith was the fuel that kept him steadfast, even when he seemed to stand alone in his fight. With every message, Jeremiah demonstrated an inner strength that defied expectations. He knew that many wished he would simply give up and stop proclaiming judgment. But his heart was deeply bound to the mission that God had entrusted to him. He carried within him the certainty that, even if everyone rejected him, the truth he proclaimed was undeniable. This strength, this perseverance that Jeremiah showed in the face of rejection, is what made him one of the most impactful prophets in biblical history. Jeremiah's journey is a reminder that perseverance in the face of adversity is an act of faith. How many times do we face rejection and obstacles for standing up for what we believe is right? Over time, Jeremiah's mission became even more dangerous. His words, which insisted on the need for repentance, continued to provoke anger and contempt among the people and the authorities. Then, the threats that had once been mere words began turning into physical violence. Jeremiah was imprisoned multiple times, accused of being an agitator who spread disorder and dissatisfaction among the people of Judah. He endured beatings, was publicly displayed in stocks, a device that locked his hands and feet, causing both pain and humiliation. Imagine standing before everyone, ridiculed and treated as a criminal simply for preaching repentance and a return to God. This was Jeremiah's reality, facing one situation after another of extreme humiliation. Yet, even in these circumstances, he was not shaken. His faith was stronger than any physical torture, and his commitment to his divine calling gave him the strength to endure the pain and contempt. Each time he was released, Jeremiah returned to proclaim the same message, the same warning, without hesitation. But Jeremiah's suffering didn't end there. There came a time when he was thrown into a muddy cistern, a dark and deep pit, where he was left to die slowly. The prophet, who had devoted his life to saving the people of Judah, now found himself in complete abandonment, with no water or food, sinking in the mud. The cistern was a physical representation of the rejection he felt. Here, Jeremiah faced literal loneliness and abandonment. Yet, even in this place of despair, his faith remained unshaken. He knew that God was with him, even in the depths of the cistern. This was the darkest moment of Jeremiah's life, where his crisis reached its peak. He had endured rejection, humiliation, and now faced the real possibility of death. But, remarkably, this extreme situation was not the end of his story. Amid this darkness, God provided a way out for him. Some allies, moved by his faith and courage, intervened and rescued Jeremiah from the cistern, restoring his freedom and giving him the chance to continue his mission. This rescue was a sign of God's faithfulness, who would never abandon his prophet, even in the most difficult situations. For you, this part of Jeremiah's story invites us to reflect on how faith can sustain us in our darkest hours. How many times do we feel abandoned or in a situation with no way out? If this story is bringing something to light for you, follow the channel and stay with us as we see what else this resilient prophet faced. Despite all the suffering he endured, Jeremiah never lost sight of the true purpose of his message. It wasn't just a warning of judgment but also a promise of hope. Amid all the dark prophecies of Jerusalem's imminent destruction, he also shared a vision of future restoration, a rebirth for Judah, guided by God's mercy. It was as if Jeremiah could see beyond the ruins to come, foreseeing a time when the people's faithfulness would be restored and their relationship with God renewed. He conveyed to the people that, despite everything, God would not abandon them. These prophecies of hope were like a balm for the few who still listened to him. Even in a time when hearts were hardened, and the people refused to abandon idolatry, Jeremiah brought the promise of a future where God would extend his mercy and renew his covenant with Judah. The message was clear: judgment would come as a consequence of the people's errors, but it would not be the end. God's justice was always accompanied by his mercy. And for those willing to listen, this was an invitation to reconciliation. Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, carried within him a deep love for the people of Judah. He did not want to see destruction, he longed to see repentance, change, a return to God. In every message of judgment, there was hidden hope, a call to transformation. He announced exile and destruction as inevitable consequences of unfaithfulness, but he also prophesied return and restoration as an act of divine mercy. For Jeremiah, Jerusalem's destruction would be painful, but he firmly believed this pain would pave the way for a new relationship between the people and God. Thus, his prophecies became more than mere predictions. They were a promise that God would never abandon his people, even when everything seemed lost. For Judah, Jeremiah's words should have been both a warning and a promise. And for us, they serve as a reminder that God's mercy always accompanies his justice, offering the chance for a new beginning. Jeremiah understood that pain and repentance could be transformative, leading to a spiritual rebirth that would renew Judah's heart. For you, the viewer, these prophecies remind us that, even in the most challenging times, there is always hope. God offers his mercy to those who seek restoration. If this story of hope and redemption resonates with you, like the video and share it with others, as this journey still has much to teach us about faith and loyalty. The destruction of Jerusalem was a devastating blow for Jeremiah. He had warned, insisted, and proclaimed relentlessly, but the people remained steadfast in their rebellion until judgment finally came. Jerusalem fell, the temple was destroyed, and the exiles bore the sorrow of a lost people. But even in the face of all this, Jeremiah did not surrender to despair. Instead, he wrote his laments, recording not only the pain of seeing his beloved city in ruins, but also the anguish of knowing that Judah's unfaithfulness had led to this destruction. He became the weeping prophet, not for a lack of faith, but for his profound love and compassion for the city and the people of God. In the book of Lamentations, Jeremiah expresses his sadness and anguish in a visceral way. He describes, with powerful and emotional words, the suffering of Jerusalem and the humiliation of its people, who now faced the consequences of their sins. The once glorious city was in ruins, and the people were scattered and unprotected. Jeremiah saw the fulfillment of his prophecies and felt the pain of separation between the people and God. He witnessed the desolation but also reflected on God's faithfulness, who, despite allowing destruction, would still offer a chance for restoration. Despite the pain and destruction, Jeremiah never wavered in his faith. On the contrary, he recognized God's sovereignty over all history, even in the darkest moments. Jeremiah's laments, though filled with anguish, also carry a deep trust in God. He acknowledged that even as the people of Judah were punished for their choices, God's faithfulness would not fail. He knew that, in the end, God would restore the nation and bring renewal. This is the core of his unshakable faith. He continued to believe in God's promises, even when everything around him suggested otherwise. Jeremiah's pain thus transforms into a message of hope for all who suffer. He doesn't merely lament but also remembers God's mercy. He writes, "The mercies of the Lord are the reason we are not consumed, because His mercies never fail, they are renewed every morning." Even in darkness, Jeremiah sees a light, a promise that God would not abandon His people. His unshakable faith is a testament to the power of hope, even in the most challenging times. Thus, the Book of Lamentations is not just a record of pain and destruction, but also a testimony to God's eternal faithfulness. Jeremiah teaches us that even when we are surrounded by desolation, there is always room for hope. God remains faithful, and, in the end, He will bring restoration. Jeremiah's story, with its deep sorrow and unbreakable faith, challenges us to trust in God's promises, even when the path seems impossible. For you, the viewer, this part of Jeremiah's story reminds us that true faith is not only about moments of happiness, but about trusting God in the hardest times. When everything seems lost, we can still trust in His faithfulness. Like the video, share this message of hope with others, and stay with us to explore more stories of faith and perseverance. Jeremiah's journey is a powerful lesson in faith that transcends time. He faced rejection, suffering, and even the destruction of his beloved Jerusalem, yet he never abandoned his mission or his faith. His story shows us that even in the darkest hours, there is always a reason to keep believing. Jeremiah reminds us that true faith does not waver in the face of adversity, but finds the strength to endure and hope for restoration. May Jeremiah's example inspire you to face your own challenges with faith and perseverance, trusting that, like him, you can find hope amid adversity. If this story touched you, like the video, share it, and stay with us to explore more stories of faith and transformation. See you next time.